Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Four and Fuel Podcast, Episode 2, Season 2. We're back after a crazy speed week, and, we're going to be here to break it all down for you. But before we get into that, let's just get everyone into the show. Wes, long day today, we've heard. So how's it going, and are you ready for tonight?
Oh, I'm ready for tonight. I got finished with the training over at the airport and finished that up. It was about 6 hours, so got home and now ready to chat about the eventful weekend that we had with the Daytona 500.
And Steve's back again. We had a little delay in recording, a couple days back. Usually we're Monday recorders. Now it's Wednesday night. A little chicken issue we've heard.
Yep, that's my fault. It's been really cold up here, and we just had a cold snap and ended up with a chicken with frostbite. So I came home to 4 very freezing chickens and ended up having to bring them inside. So they're actually in the next room over right now. So if you hear any, well, I'm hoping that it's pretty late that they're sleeping by now. But if you hear some clucking in the background, it's from me.
It's not his wife. It's not his wife.
Is not. It is not. It's just the chickens. So, but really excited. Daytona was really exciting. But before we get any further, Dom, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Good to see you're looking out for me. No one did it last episode, but Steve's taking the initiative today.
Just remember who does that.
Yeah, I will remember that. So, down the line, if something were to happen to me, I might leave the will of the podcast to somebody.
There you go.
But no, I've been doing great. I binge watched the whole the Crew series with Kevin James. The new
How'd you like it?
Sitcom. It was better than I expected. I don't think it'd be like an all-time favorite sitcom, anything like that, but it was definitely less cringy than I thought it was going to be, because I kind of expected it to be a little cringy, kind of like kind of hard to watch. But honestly, I watched 5 episodes the other day, and I watched the final 5 today because it's only like 20, 25-minute episodes. So it was pretty good. Kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger, but we'll see if they get a season 2 on that show, because honestly, with Netflix originals, it's hard to get past season 1. Honestly, no matter how good the show is, they seem to get canceled. So
cancel culture, man, just unbelievable.
So yeah, if you have any time to check out the Crew on Netflix, I definitely recommend it. Give it a watch for yourself, and I'd like to hear the opinions from you guys and anybody listening. I'd love to hear you guys' opinions over on Twitter or in the comment section below on YouTube. And we decided, after a little debate, we brought back the rookie. Sam, we brought you back. We didn't, not yet. So how you feeling now that you're still here?
Feeling pretty good. I'm glad to be back for a second week. I know I'm on multiple one-day contracts. So it's nice to be back. Nice to be back on the podcast. It was weird. You did say it was a crazy speed week. The weirdest part of that was the fact that it was speed week. There was 1 week. There wasn't all this, testing and everything going on. So it was like a real quick snap into the weekend for the Daytona 500. So
I think before we get into the Daytona 500, we're going to kind of go in chronological order of the week. So everything kind of kicked off on Tuesday night with the Busch Clash, which happened to be won by a Busch, Kyle Busch. And, Steve, we go we go to the let's just go to the last lap, because the rest of the race is kind of, other than Truex getting caught in some mud and Kevin Harvick going off track a couple times, there wasn't too much eventful in the race. So, did you expect Chase Elliott to do what he did?
Yeah, I did. First of all, I think Truex by far had the best car down there. I mean, to drive from the back of the field to the lead twice, once after that penalty, which is really bizarre. I think he just got caught up on driving I don't know if he just thought he was driving on the oval or whatnot, but just completely missed the chicane. So I definitely thought the Truex had the best car, but then coming down to the final lap, once Blaney got past Elliott and they're coming to the white flag, I knew that Elliott was just going to try to dive bomb every single corner that he could. And Blaney's car was starting to fall off there towards the end. And, and then just going into the chicane, just completely sent it in. It's unfortunate. But I think Elliott knew that, it wasn't a points race. And if you're not out there going for the win, then what are you doing? And I think if it was, the regular season race, things would have worked out differently. But this was just bring home the checkered flag or bring home the steering wheel, and ultimately, neither of them got the win. Kyle Busch snuck past, so that was a little unfortunate. But
there's two steering wheels there, no checkers.
No, yep, neither one. So, but I thought it was an exciting race. I thought the package was a lot better than what we saw last August. So I'm excited to see what this weekend's going to bring.
Now we go to the other side. Wes, or Ryan Blaney, expert. Do you think that move by Chase Elliott was kind of a cheap shot?
I think it's hard to call it a cheap shot because they've only run this track twice and they didn't really have a lot of practice. So I feel like something like that, it's just not really the right word. I was just in the situation. It was just racing. I think Steve nailed it. There's the only thing different with that race was that there was a big cash prize on the line. It wasn't a championship. And I think these drivers care a lot more about a championship. So I feel like in a situation like that, we saw a pretty tame Blaney in the end, a pretty tame Chase in the end. But the thing that did suck was that neither one of them won. And them being really close friends, I think that they both wanted to get the victory. I think they both kind of hinted at that too in their post-race interviews. So I think that was kind of the unfortunate part that neither one of them walked away with it. But that corner just on its own is it's tough. I feel like they might need to at some point look into, I don't know, widening it or just doing something a little different with it. Because they don't use that in any other form of racing I've seen at Daytona. I can't really think of a time they've ever used it besides in NASCAR, and that was last year.
NASCAR thing.
So yeah, it just seems like that could be something they need to fix. But other than that, there's nothing really to take away from it. Just the fact Kyle Busch pulled off the win. But I did really enjoy the race. I thought the racing was entertaining. There were a lot of guys up front, both Chase and Blaney, Truex and Hamlin. They seem to be the four best cars all day. Truex, definitely unfortunate circumstances for him, but it was definitely a solid race and a nice little change. I thought it was pretty good for being a road course. I think people slept on it more than or quite a bit, and I think it definitely showed what it's capable of. So I definitely wouldn't mind seeing it again in the future.
No, definitely. Kyle Busch getting his second win in the Busch Clash. He had one in 2012 and now 2021. And Sam, we heard Chase Elliott talk about, he hates that he got into Blaney, but he wouldn't have minded if he got into other people. And I think we all know who target number one is, that being Joey Logano, that he really wouldn't mind it. So do you think Joey Logano kind of heard that interview? Do you think that that kind of plays into his mind a little bit?
Honestly, by the end of that run, Joey was a non-factor. So if he was in the lead, it would have been an easy pass. But I honestly don't think that Joey is going to let any of that get in his head. It's like, I mean, it's all just talk after a race. You're heated, you're in the moment. He didn't say any names anyway, so like, and going back to the actual incident where he did get into him, it depends on which side you're on, because if you're a Blaney fan, you see Chase had room towards the curb that he could have used, but he didn't. And if you're a Chase fan, you're like, well, he had to send it in there to go for the win. So it's like, that incident in general is just like, it's just a racing deal. Like you're going for, what was it? How much money did they have on the line there? Was it $1 million? Was it somewhere in there?
I think it's like $250,000.
$250,000 or something. It was a lot of money. So it's one of those things. You're like, if I finish second, I don't get any, or I don't get near that amount of money. So it's like you just got to go for it. And I don't fault him. Another thing is that backstretch bus stop. That backstretch bus stop is something that I would change. I would add more curbing to it because there was a lot of dirt on the track.
They're actually doing that. They're
are?
adding turtles, I believe, in that bus stop, just like the Charlotte Roval kind of is, to try to prevent more dirt getting kicked onto the track.
Because that was
I think they're
issue.
adding concrete. I think they're adding concrete like next on the inside portion of the bus stop too, next to the turtles, so that if they do hop the turtles, they're just going to run over concrete first. So they have to really, really be off track to hit any dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And to add one more thing on that too, I think it helps with drivers taking it as aggressively as they have been. I think it's one thing to kind of settle it down, and it might also take out some controversy because we did see, unfortunately, a lot of people, what I thought could be considered cutting the corner in situations. So I think that definitely changes the game because turtles, you do not want to hit it in the way that they were taking those corners. So it might make of a more strategic and difficult race, especially on that backstretch portion.
No, yeah, definitely. Just something to change up. And honestly, the first few laps, since we'd have no practice this week, that's going to be big. Those, I feel like, especially in the truck or Xfinity races, we could definitely see some people hitting those turtles and possibly damaging their cars. We saw Joey Logano do it on lap 1, I believe, in the Clash, in the chicane at the end. He got pretty good damage. He was able to fight back, but damage like that with these Cup cars. These Cup cars aren't as durable as like an Xfinity car. So you definitely want to limit the damage as much as possible. And speaking of damage, there's a lot of damage done in the duels. The first duel was kind of controversial because of how the rules all kind of work out. Eric Almirola won the duel, but the real controversy kind of came with Ty Dillon. Everyone felt like, well, it's kind of stupid that Ty Dillon was the highest finisher out of the guys that didn't qualify in, but he still doesn't get in, which I kind of agree with. Why bother? Like, I don't understand. I feel like if the guy that, is locked in on speed is the first of the 4, just give it to the next highest finisher. Like, why bother racing then?
Exactly. Yeah. If, like Ryan Preece, he knew he was in the Daytona 500. Grant, you could make the argument that he was trying to get a better starting position, but at the same time, like, Cindric was a lap down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why punish Ty Dillon, who just happened to get put in a bad situation where he didn't have drafting help at the end? Why punish him for that? But he finished, I think, sixth or seventh, somewhere around that. And Cindric finished a lap down. So I don't understand. The rule's been around for quite a few years, but it's been a while since we've seen a situation like this come forth, where the highest finishing car that's already locked in, now it has to fall back on speed behind that. I don't know. It's just really confusing, even to the point where Chase Elliott tweeted out that he was confused. So here you have, Cup drivers that are confused on the rules. And it was a real heartbreak for Ty Dillon, because he would have had a really good car in the 500 if he had made it in. And just really unfortunate.
Yeah, you saw that happen. Then the second duel, you had desperate men doing some desperate things.
Yeah.
Toward the end of that race, and Garrett Smithley made it 3 wide and got into Keselowski. He kind of came down. Keselowski came up, caused a big wreck, took Noah Gragson out. And it looked like Noah Gragson was in a good spot to make the 500 for Beard Motorsports. And that was pretty heartbreaking for that team. And then you had Austin Dillon pull off the win at the end of that duel, which kind of set up for a pretty good field in the 500. I think there were some cars that didn't deserve to be in the 500. Like, charter system is kind of bogus, I believe. I don't think you should just be able to buy your way into the race. But, like, there's people like Derek Cope. I mean, Derek Cope couldn't even keep up in the draft. There's no reason he should be in the 500.
He was the only car, I think, after about the first 25 laps to go 2 laps down. And not only that, but every other car that was in the race was in the lead draft. And that's something that I feel like we heard Steve Phelps talk about. We heard a lot of the NASCAR officials talk about that's something they're going to look into in the future, which is definitely good because the charter system definitely needs a reevaluation or just a termination. We got to figure something out.
Yeah. Like, it's not fair for 4 Rick Ware cars to be in the field that were like 3 seconds off the pace in qualifying to be locked into the 500. And then for guys like Ty Dillon and Noah Gragson, both who could have easily raced their way into the 500, just didn't have the qualifying speed that Preece and Reagan had, missed the 500. Like, there's no sense in doing that. Like, I watched that qualifying session, and the 51 and 52 car were like 3 seconds off the last place car in qualifying. There's no
amount of draft that's going to help that.
Exactly.
And what made it just as heartbreaking was the fact we had the Beard Motorsports president pass away just a couple weeks ago, and Noah not making the field, unfortunately, in his first start, or what could have been his first start. And not only that, but Gaunt Brothers missed the 500 last year due to unfortunate circumstances with Daniel Suarez. So there's 2 very unfortunate teams, very capable of not only, I think, making the race or what could have made the race, but I would say definitely competing for a top 10. They've definitely stepped up, and 2 very talented drivers that have a big future ahead. Just really unfortunate weekend for both teams.
Yeah, so that's what we got out of the duels. You saw Almirola and Austin Dillon win. And then we saw William Byron get in a wreck, go to a backup car. So he had to start at the rear. The 48, Alex Bowman, they feared they might have had an engine issue, but they seemed to get that taken care of. But anyways, we'll get back into the Cup Series toward the end of the episode. We're going to go into the Truck Series. We had a crazy race on Friday night in the trucks. I don't know if I'd say it was good. It was crazy. I think the truck race, the younger the field gets, I feel like just the lower quality, because these guys just don't. I feel like they just have no clue what they're doing when they get there. Because, yeah, you could say they've done Daytona at ARCA, but that Daytona at ARCA, honestly, is just a lot of single file. You can't do anything at this point. So it's just strung out. You don't get experience of going 3 wide, in a pack. And it just doesn't happen in our ARCA series. And it really shows when you get to the truck series. The truck race was nothing but stupid moves and just stupid wrecks. And honestly, I don't even feel like going over anything except for the last lap. The last lap was good. The last lap was really good, I think. Just the coverage after the race wasn't that great, but that last lap, you see Corey Roper come out of nowhere, get to the lead, and he leads coming to the white and leads almost all the way through off turn 4. And they wrecked behind him. Ben Rhodes made the move. Ben Rhodes just did everything perfectly. And he actually showed his experience to win the race. And Jordan Anderson getting another second place finish at Daytona. Steve, that's all I could say. I'm not going to say I was happy with that race. I'm not going to say it was awful, but it's definitely a product that definitely doesn't look too good for the young guys.
Yeah, you could definitely tell the experience versus the non-experience. Like, you could definitely tell the Matt Crafton's, Grant Enfingers, and versus the Haley Deegan's, Chris Wright's of the truck series. Because coming off of turn 4 to the checkered flag, you just see Chris Wright just turn right, pull a Blaney at Talladega and just hook it right.
Wes knows somebody who hooks it right on a straightaway.
But
Dawson Cramp didn't make the field. He did not make the field. No Dawson Cramp.
We'll see if he can make it this week at the road course.
Man. But yeah, I thought, there you could definitely tell the inexperience out there, because there is a lot of questionable moves. And then on the last lap, you see Austin Wayne Self getting sent off to the infield grass. And do I think it's entertaining? Yes. However, I don't know. It's just it proves to me the Truck Series. It's always a experience versus inexperienced game, and Ben Rhodes, like you said, used his experience and unfortunately broke the hearts of Corey Roper and Corey Roper fans out there, and then Jordan Anderson almost coming through for the win.
All 5 Corey Roper fans were really sad.
Yes, all 5 of them. Honestly, I just can't wait for the day that Johnny Sauter retires, because he just said, "Forget my teammates," because didn't help him at the end of the first stage, and then he just said, "That's it, I'm done helping them." And so
that could not have been a comfortable Monday at the shop after that week.
No, I was like, man, these guys are teammates and going at it. So it was an exciting finish, but it's hard to say it was a good race when there was just caution after caution after caution. I mean, we didn't even make it to turn 1, lap 1, and there was a caution. And
poor James Busher.
Poor James Busher didn't even get to the start finish line, and he was done.
Half the field didn't even get to the line before they were wrecking.
Right. Yeah. So exciting finish, but overall the race pretty lackluster.
And then we went into Saturday. We had the ARCA race, not much to talk about there. And then Xfinity, we saw Austin Cindric get the win. Britt, what were your takes out of the Xfinity race?
Boring finish, and Austin Cindric is the class of the field. Like, I mean, that's pretty much all that you can really take from that, is like everyone else is like just a step behind. Because how do you lead going into the green, white checkered, and you keep the lead the last 2 laps and then you win? Like at a super speedway, like he's the class of the field. He's just one of the smartest people out there, if not the smartest person out there. And you can see why he's probably going to have a ride in the Cup Series next year. Because like I mean, there's other things to talk about during the race. I'm going to be honest, I fell asleep during the middle of it, so I missed a lot of the center of the race. But like from when I watched in replays and stuff, there was a lot of just, typical middle of the race at Daytona, getting a line, just log laps. They were too wide some of the times, but like they'd end up wrecking, and then they'd be like, all right, let's go back to single file. And just overall, not too eventful of a race. Nothing huge, not a huge finish. It was, I'm not going to say it was a bad race, but I'm not going to say it was an amazing race. It was just a middle of the line. Like, I wouldn't go out and watch the full race replay again, but also I'm not going to dog on anything that was wrong with the race. The guy that should have won. So.
Yeah, and we saw Brandon Jones spin himself. Nothing new. We saw Riley Herbst. His bad luck continues in the Xfinity Series. Wes, how did Jeb Burton do in his debut? We're big Jeb Burton fans on the podcast. So,
yes, sir.
I got to give a shout out to my Virginia boys, Jeb Burton and Brandon Brown, both really conveniently teamed up at the end of the race. I was so happy. And with damaged cars, a little bit, slightly wounded cars, they both worked their way and got solid top 6 finishes. So I was really happy. Gotta give a shout out to both of them. But for real, it was definitely a solid race, even though we did see some single file racing. Cindric definitely had a really good performance. I think that's just a big staple based off what we saw last year from him, not just during the whole season. And I think that's definitely going to put a strong stance for the beginning of the season. I definitely think Cindric has not really a lot to prove, because we already saw what he can do last year, but this year I think he's really going to show us what he's got. And I think this is a really strong start. If he can win at the restrictor plates, I think we know he's going to win quite a bit more this season. So definitely a strong performance from him. But yeah, a lot of the bigger contenders got taken out in that one wreck with Ty Dillon. We saw pretty much all the junior motorsports cars out of contention. And Justin Haley, a guy that had won a lot of restrictor plates, last year, and that's one thing that he's been known for. He was gone, but overall, still a pretty solid race. Brett Moffitt got a pretty strong finish for a new team in their second season.
P2, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
P2.
Moffitt.
He,
It was
he had a chance to win, which is good for him after getting wrecked in the truck race. And Harrison Burton leading the Gibbs train there, he was able to get a top 5. So definitely a lot of strong guys up front, but a lot of strong names taken out early. We'll have to see kind of what happens the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's just a not as eventful race at Daytona as we've seen in the past years with the Xfinity Series, but I think that race kind of shows what we could be in store for this season with Austin Cindric potentially kind of running that series this season. Now we jump into Sunday, the big show, the Daytona 500. We get started on time. We make it 15 laps. On lap 15, there's an incident. Eric Almirola is turned into the outside wall, taking out Alex Bowman and a bunch of others. I think it was 16 cars involved. And this was after a bump gone wrong. Christopher Bell gave Eric Almirola a push, and that push just sent Almirola right.
That push came to shove, and
so
all of a sudden Almirola was in the outside.
How much blame can you put on Christopher Bell? I mean, you can't say they're being too aggressive for pushing because they were doing it the whole time. And I mean, realistically, they push all the time. You're not going to realistically get a line going unless, you're pushing. And you have to test out those pushes early on so you're not clueless later on in the race. And you got to know what you're doing. Yeah, it doesn't help when, Kyle Busch gives Bell a push, so Bell gains speed. But it also seems like for some reason Eric Almirola in these super speedway races just can't, his car does not like being pushed. I don't know if it's the driver, the car, or he's got the worst luck ever, and the guy behind him has no clue what he's doing every time when he gets hit.
That was shades of 2018.
Yeah, literally just to the outside wall there. And then I think last fall in Talladega, the same thing happened to him. But I think that one was just more crazy because there was literally, I think Logano was pushing Bowman into Keselowski into Almirola. I think that one was a lot worse. There was nothing Almirola could have done there. There was 4 guys just locked up into him. This time it was one guy, and Bell, because the drivers they tell you, don't get into my left rear because the left rear is going to turn you. So I think Bell was trying to line it up, but a little bit to the right. And for some reason, Almirola's car just did not like it at all. So I think that really kind of ruined the race. And they only had to make it, probably 1 or 2 more laps before the rain came or the lightning hit first. So all they had to do was make it 1 or 2 more laps. So we would have had a full field except for Derek Cope, who he was not letting William Byron or Bubba Wallace pass him in the first 2 laps. He was making that car, he was making it wide. And I don't know if he was mad with Jeff Gordon and he thought Jeff Gordon was still in the 24. But yeah, he was not letting them by. Bubba actually got some damage early, and Derek Cope was out of the race on lap 3 due to a cut tire. And some say that is a fitting end because his Daytona 500 win came at the expense of a flat tire of some guy who drove the 3 car back in 1990. So other than that, Wes, how much do you think that big one kind of impacted the rest of the race once they got going 5 hours and 40 minutes later?
Man, it definitely changed things up because we had so many big names taken out early. We saw Truex and Blaney both having bad luck, not only in the early what we saw in the clash, but now they were taken out early. 2 favorites, what I would think to be able to compete. Even Truex, even though he doesn't have a win at restrictor plates, he's always a contender. But I would say those 2. We saw Matt DiBenedetto taken out, a fan favorite that's always run good at restrictor plates. 2 Hendrick cars that I guess started on the front row, or what were to be started on the front row. I guess Byron had to go to the back, but still Bowman and Byron both taken out early. So a lot of big names. It kind of reduced the field size, but also the competition size. Some of the guys that we would expect to run up front and contend. I thought Almirola had one of the best cars all week. It looked like, even though he just led the field, it just seemed like his car was one of the quickest in situations. Same with the Hendrick cars. I think that they could have contended too. So I definitely think it shaped things up for what was to be a tamer race. And that's what we ended up seeing. We saw a lot of single file lines throughout the entire course of the race, especially in stage 2, like late, and most of stage 3, almost all of stage 3, unfortunately. So definitely, I think shaped things up. But I still think we would have saw a lot of single file racing had those guys not been taken out early.
And you just think about it. Yeah, all those guys, strong cars, just out of the race early. And then they kind of raced for a little bit once they got back out there. But other than that, it was just kind of a tame race after that. People say it's boring. I don't know if it's more or less boring. I mean, we can't expect these guys to go out there 3 wide for 200 laps. It's just not going to happen. But there was a lot of single file, especially at the end of that race. I feel like the end of the race was kind of disappointing. But it seemed like the Toyotas of Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin, I think, had the strongest cars after that. I think once they got out front, it was hard to get by them, especially Hamlin. Hamlin, once he got out front, led 98 laps, won both stages, and he just knows what he's doing when he's out front. He seems to be able to control the runs almost a little better than anybody else, and he doesn't put himself in precarious situations like some guys do when they get in the lead. They think they get over their head, they try blocking every little move, and you just can't do it. That said, Christopher Bell cuts a tire that kind of takes him, out of a full speed car. And then you get to those final set of pit stops, and it seemed like the Toyotas were kind of, I wouldn't say behind they were kind of behind on that, but I think they should have tried to execute something to pit with either the Fords or the Chevys, considering they only had 3 competitive cars in the 23, 18, and the 11. That kind of took them out of it because Denny Hamlin had such a good pit stop. It got him like 2 seconds ahead of Kyle Busch. So they had no chance once the pack got lined up on them. And then Bubba, unfortunately, had the vibration after the final pit stop, which brought him back down pit road, which took him out of it, put him a lap down. So I'm curious, Steve, what you thought of the strategy at the end. Do you think all the who really played their strategy the best? I think the whole race.
Yeah, I think you look at the Toyota teams, and if you're not looking just at the finish, I think the Toyota teams had the best strategy. Aside from that last pit stop, Hamlin and Bell were by far the 2 best Toyotas out there in the race. Truex, we don't really know how he would have done, but Bubba Wallace and Kyle Busch were hanging up there too. For a while, those 4 were really looking stout. And then you go towards the end of the race, Toyota, I was really confused as to why they decided to pit by themselves, and then they're so strung out. I mean, even if they were together, the field still would have caught them. So I was really confused there. And towards the end, it looked like Team Penske was really showing the best strategy there with Keselowski and Logano. And then, of course, them getting into it on the final lap kind of ruined their strategy to win. Ryan Blaney, he was taken out in that lap 15 incident, which is really unfortunate for him because I felt like Blaney was going to have a really good run in that race. But because it just rained so much and Daytona still has real grass, that Blaney was going to make it through that wreck. Mm-hmm. He's just going to spin down to the grass, but because that grass was so wet and dug in the splitter and just completely tore the car up. So I think it's time for a lot of these racetracks, especially, Daytona, which is known for getting a lot of rain, to look at some grass alternatives. Like if they were to use like AstroTurf, it can still look just like grass, but it won't tear a car up if they run through it when it's
actually
been
drains
raining
and
for.
it's
Yeah.
be able to drive over it.
Exactly.
You
We saw that with Brandon Jones too in the Xfinity race. You know, he was probably just going to spin. Well, he's coming back up on the track, but you know, his whole front end got torn off because of the wet grass.
I mean, how many times have we seen Jimmy Johnson spin through the grass and just nothing happens to him because he's so lucky? You know, he just spins through the grass. Nothing happens to Jimmy Johnson, even though Jimmy Johnson fans
on top of a golden horseshoe.
Yeah, but I mean, Jimmy Johnson fans want to claim that he has the worst luck in NASCAR ever. Yeah, okay.
They've clearly never met Eric Jones.
But yeah, that was a tough break for Blaney, and it took Fox like a half hour to like point that out. That yeah, he was fine until he just got destroyed by the grass. So I'm jumping ahead to the last few laps. I can't believe the Chevys waited so long. I couldn't believe it. I think they needed to make a move with 3 or 4 to go. They just could not wait. I don't know, understand it, because you got two of the most aggressive guys too leading the charge of Austin Dillon and Chase Elliott. They're always never wanting to sit in line.
Right.
And they sat in line till 2 to go.
It surprised me too, because I thought Austin Dillon and Chase were the best Chevys of the field, and they both sat in line. And funny enough, the only 2 people that I ever saw try to make a move early were the lap down of Bubba Wallace and one forward of Cole Custer at the back of the line with absolutely nothing to lose. So why are all these guys just waiting?
The
It didn't make sense,
Haas
for sure.
Number 41.
For sure, yeah, for sure would have expected Austin to make a move, and he did, but it was too little, too late for that Chevy.
You just all that they waited so long. Then you get to the last lap. People are still debating on. I believe Joey Logano threw a late block. That's what caused it. I think McDowell was giving Keselowski a push. I think Keselowski did everything right, and I think Keselowski had that race won had Logano not turned down.
I agree. I think Keselowski really timed that move well, and I thought he had gotten to the inside of Logano, and it just looked like, I don't know if it was the bump from McDowell or if Logano just turned down, but I thought at first Logano was just going to get sent to the inside and Brad was going to cruise past, but then all of a sudden Brad got turned up to the outside wall.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Busch nails him. Austin Cindric ARCA breaks it, just destroys it. Huge fireball from Keselowski.
And I can't believe NASCAR fans are blaming NASCAR for throwing the caution. That is
right.
You
insane.
see that much fire, you've got to call the caution. Like there's no way that you can not think that's a safety concern for somebody, if not the drivers.
And they're like, well, they could slow down by that time. That's not the point. The safety crews can't get on the track until the caution's out. They can't start heading over until the caution's out. Well, they'll slow down by turn 3. Well, obviously they're going to get slowed down by turn 3. It's not that. It's the safety crews getting out there as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So, Sam, as our Penske guy, Logano guy, what's going through your head when you see all of that unfold?
Well, first of all, coming back to the white flag, I do blame myself for saying just hold him off for one more lap, because you never say one more. Also, I knew coming back to the line that Joey was probably going to end up in the fence just because he's Joey Logano, love the man to death, can't throw a block to save his life. His blocks are always half a second too late, which, I mean, usually if you're trying to time something, half a second off is not that bad. 2K jump shot, you'll get slightly late. Maybe you'll hit the shot. You throw a block at Daytona International Raceway on the last lap of the Daytona 500, and you get turned into the outside fence. Or wait, he go inside?
He went inside. Brad went outside.
Brad went outside, and then all of a sudden, Michael McDowell, while saying a prayer in the car as they split the seats in front of him, he won the race. So I could have known. I could have probably told you that somewhere in that lap that Joey was going to throw a stupid block. It's just kind of expected at this point. Like, and he wins some races by doing it too. But it's just a really aggressive driving style. But it's always just half a second too late. And I can understand the frustration of a lot of people that are around him.
And best reaction. I want this edited in. Best reaction goes to Matt Kenseth for his call during that wreck, because it's so Matt Kenseth like, it's unbelievable.
34 in third place. It's going to be hard to muster anything up. Oop, never mind.
Oh my gosh.
Looks like Michael McDowell is going to get his first win right here, possibly if they throw the yellow.
And before we finish this and head on to the road course, or actually our splash and go segment, I'm just going to throw in a Denny Hamlin tidbit. Last 10 Daytona 500s, Denny Hamlin has 2 finishes outside the top 5. He has more wins, 3, than he does finishes outside the top 5, an average finish of 5.2. And I think it's arguably the best 10 race stretch in Daytona 500 history. Find me a better 10 race stretch from any driver in the 500, and I will be happy to debate it.
It helps when there's 15 cars. Yeah, either Richard Petty against diner owners, or like this year where there was like 15 cars on the lead lap at the finish.
Denny Hamlin's the smartest super speedway driver. I hold to it. I don't understand why the clown was put over my face last week for saying it.
Clown again. He's getting it again.
Listen, I roll the tapes back to last week when I said I don't even know why we raced for 200 laps, because that race could have been finished in 2 laps.
Well, Denny Hamlin led 98 of them. He didn't hang out. He only hung out at the back for 15 laps. Well, that's all he needed to do. He led 98 laps. He's 4th all time now in laps led in the Daytona 500.
Yeah, 98 laps. Didn't win the 500 though.
98
they
laps.
They were too good on pit road to win the race. Too good. They executed too well.
0 championships. 0.
Well,
he tweeted today he's winning the championship this year. So
yeah,
I'm gonna give a shout out to the race winner, which we barely talked about, Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell.
I love
the
that,
one.
man.
Well, the one thing that I know, yeah, you mentioned it. I was going to say that out of all of his super speedway stats, because I feel like he's always been overlooked as a driver, that's his, not counting the races he's not qualified, but out of all the underfunded teams and low budget teams he's raced for, that's his 12th top 15 finish and 15 Daytona starts, which is incredible for a guy that this is the best car he's ever been in with front row. So for a guy like that to just kind of be that quiet, but also that solid at super speedways and restricted plates, and especially here at Daytona, really impressive. I feel like it was a long time coming and definitely well deserved, because he's been a contender all these years, especially at Daytona, and finally was able to pull it off. So a big congrats to him. And what I think was it's like 2-3 in his 300 starts, somewhere in the mid 300s,
328, I think, something just like that.
Crazy.
Yeah,
a big congrats to him.
I was definitely saying some bad words on the backstretch whenever Joey got wrecked, but then when I saw that Michael McDowell won, and I was like, you can't be upset with that. That's a real upset right there.
And also a big win, and our prayers with Bob Jenkins. Hopefully he can fight through the cancer, and that's still just a big win for that organization and Michael McDowell. And we got to give props to Wes for saying last week that Michael McDowell was going to make the playoffs. He was going to win a race.
I've also got Michael McDowell surprisingly winning a race.
Granted, he said Road America, but he still won a race, and
we still
have Road America. We'll see. But yeah, no, that was pretty cool. I just had a feeling it felt like it was the year where we're going to see an underdog win, and he was able to pull off a victory at a super speedway. So pretty wild.
All right. So that's enough for the Daytona 500. It was a good race. I wouldn't say great, but we had a surprise winner in Michael McDowell. Now we're going to jump into our first splash and go segment for the season. And if you want to ask us any questions for the Splash and Go segment, just head on over to our Twitter at 4 and Field Podcast. No underscores, no anything else, just 4 and Field Podcast. And just comment or DM us any questions, and we will make sure to answer them on a future episode. We have 3 questions today. I'm going to give them all to you guys. So I'm going to start with Wes. This is from John Skates at JSkates97 on Twitter. What's your all-time favorite paint scheme?
That's a tough question. I should have thought of more time to prepare. I would say if I give a biased one, I would say I could go Gordon, but I was also a huge Dave Blaney fan as a kid, and his Amico scheme, the '93, I feel like was one of the most overlooked, and also is one of the just I don't know, just very unique with its
Wes is old.
combination. Yeah, a little bit,
Yeah,
but no,
well,
I
93 scheme.
love that car, and if I were to give one that just kind of was ran on a consistent basis, I would actually say Kevin Harvick's 2002 Goodwrench car. I feel like that car just it really meshed nicely, and it was a nice contrast from um, just the silver and black that was on the car. So with a nice little like redder, like a pinkish trim on the bottom. So I really really love those two paint schemes in particular. I think those might be just off the top of my head two of my favorites ever, and that I've seen in NASCAR.
All right, I'm going to give this one to Steve. Regardless of the fashion of racing you saw on Sunday, how excited are you for the 2021 NASCAR season going forward? That's from Dakota Rutledge at Dakota Drake 4_.
I'm super excited for the 2021 season. You know, it's thankfully we have the NFL to kind of get us through the winter, but once the green flag drops in the Daytona 500, it's so much fun knowing that the 2021 season's back, and especially now with the podcast, getting to talk about it every week just makes it even more fun. Really, kind of rejuvenated. I fell out of NASCAR a couple of years ago just because I was like, it's after Gordon retired. I was like, it's not really that fun, but now getting to be able to do the podcast, it gives me a purpose to watch and follow NASCAR even more closely now. So I'm really excited and hope that, like Fox says, that this is the best season ever.
Definitely. And our final question's going to Sam. This is from Joe Went at Joe PD Went 89. Do you think NASCAR needs to change their super speedway rules package after the last lap Daytona 500 crash?
Big shout out to Joe. Big fan of Joe. Love you, Joe. No, probably not. I mean, there's not really much to rules package. I mean, I've never been a big fan of the double yellow line, so I've always said, get that out of here. Just let them race. They're not going to be stupid with it, and with your safety measures, you should be able to protect against even if they are stupid. But like, I've never been a huge yellow line fan, so personally, that wasn't really affected by this 500. But just in general, I've wanted to let that go. In coming with the caution, we already addressed that before with what Dom said. Like, you got to get your safety crew out there. There's a giant fireball. You don't know if someone's burning alive inside of their car right now. So you just, there's not really much you can do with the rules. Personally, I'd like to see a little bit more horsepower, a little better aero package where they could get better runs, because it seemed like it was a real struggle to get the runs that they got, and they weren't that great when they got them. So on the rules side, not really, but on the aero package side, I'd like to see a little bit more done, a little more tweaking done to that.
Definitely, we'll see all this change next year once we get into the next gen car. Hopefully the next gen does roll out next year. We're going to jump into our race picks for the Daytona Road Course. Just raced here, on Tuesday night last week for the Busch Clash. We come back here for a day race, hopefully. Well, if there's not lightning, they should be racing regardless. But anyways, we're going to do same rules as last year. Can't pick the same driver 2 weeks in a row, and we go in reverse order of where our picks finished. So by virtue of picking Ryan Blaney, Sam gets to go first this week.
I'd like to personally thank Ryan Blaney, not for winning and giving me a win pick out of the Daytona 500, but the next best thing out of the Daytona 500, which is finishing in dead last of all four of these people. And my pick, shocker, I'm going to go with Chase Elliott here as the winner for the Roval. He's just been so strong on road courses, and I don't see him losing this weekend.
All right, and by virtue of picking Kyle Busch, I get to go next, and I'm going to pick his teammate, Martin Truex Jr. He was flying in the Busch Clash, and if it wasn't for some mud, he was going to win the thing. He drove from the back to the front twice, like Steve mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. Martin Truex Jr. is winning. His luck is he's going to win this week. I think he's going to win about 5, 6, 7 times more this season. Win number 1 comes this weekend. And by virtue of picking Brad Keselowski, almost getting Wes that first win of the season, Wes gets to go 3rd.
Yeah, Brad, unfortunately. Well, he's not going to win this week, unfortunately. I don't think he's going to be he's solid at the road courses, but I don't think he'll win at the road course. I'm going to go back to the guy that I picked for the Clash. I'm going to pick Ryan Blaney. I think that Ryan Blaney's got to go out there and prove himself, because he did get taken out in the Clash, and he also didn't get a chance to show what he had in the 500. So I think that he and Truex are definitely going to be hungry, because they both had bad luck in both of these races that they never really got a chance to even get a finished result to show their worth. So since Dom chose Truex, that was kind of the guy I was leaning towards. I'm going to go the other guy I think that has a really good chance, and a guy that stepped up big from last year, because he was not a contender at all the year before in the road course. And this year, all of a sudden, he looked like a possible contender for the win. So I think Blaney's got a good shot, and he's going to be my pick to win.
And going into turn 3, it looked like Steve may have stole a win to start the season with Joey Logano, but that did not happen. It ended up being a 12th place finish. And by virtue of that 12th place finish, Steve has already missed out on 3 picks already. And now he's got to pick.
The 3 guys I was going to go with. If it wasn't Elliott, I was going Truex. And if it wasn't Truex, I was going Blaney.
I'm
and
just
of course,
saying,
all of
Michael
those are.
McDowell.
Hey, could
He
go
starts
2
second.
for 2. Yes. He's a pretty good road racer, too. Man, dang it. I thought I was going to get that point. I was really rooting for Logano there, and of course that didn't happen. So, but I'm going to go for a guy who was really good in the Busch Clash, didn't win, but and actually almost got the win over Chase Elliott last August. I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin on this one. He's actually a pretty underrated road course racer, and I feel like with him, he led a good chunk of the Busch Clash, and so I'm picking Denny Hamlin for this one, and hopefully this one doesn't get away from me.
If there's a couple guys we didn't mention, you got to look out for. AJ Allmendinger is racing this weekend in the 16, and Chase Briscoe, he was a really good road course driver, getting a couple wins in the Xfinity Series. So those are a couple guys you definitely got to watch out for on Sunday. But other than that, that's all we got time for today. We had our whole Daytona Speedweek conversation, got our Splash and Go segment back for the season, and we gave our race picks. Hope everyone enjoys some road course racing. Second race of the season, still in Daytona. Second week being in Florida. Hopefully everyone enjoys the racing this weekend, and hopefully they put on a good show. Other than that, we got Sam, Steve, Wes, I'm Dom. Enjoy the races, and we'll see you next week.